Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Dhena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah.
Okay, text number 116, chapter 16, Kinchitraketu meets the Lord. Shri Shukadeva Goswami said, My dear King Parikshit, by his mystic power, the great sage Narada brought the dead son into the vision of all the lamenting relatives, and then spoke as follows. Sri Narada Muni said, O living entity, all good fortune unto you. Just see your father and mother, all your friends and relatives are overwhelmed with grief because of your passing away. Because you died untimely, the balance of your lifetime still remains. Therefore you may re-enter your body and enjoy the remainder of your life, surrounded by your friends and relatives. Accept the royal throne and all the opulences given by your father. For by the mystic power of Narada Muni, the living entity re-entered his dead body for a short time and spoke in reply to Narada Muni's request. He said, According to the results of my fruitive activities, I, the living being, transmigrate from one body to another, sometimes going to the species of the demigods, sometimes to the species of lower animals, sometimes among the vegetables, and sometimes to the human species. Therefore, in which birth were these my mother and father? No one is actually my mother and father. How can I accept these two people as my parents? Purport. Here is made clear that the living entity enters a material body that is like a machine created by the 5 gross elements of material nature, earth, water, fire, air, and sky, and the 3 subtle elements, mind, intelligence, and ego. As confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, there are 2 separate entities called the inferior and superior natures, which both belong to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. According to the results of a living entity's fruitive actions, he is forced to enter the material elements in different types of bodies. This time, the living entity was supposed to have been the son of Maharaja Chitraketu and Queen Kritadyuti, because according to the laws of nature, he had entered a body made by the king and queen. Actually, however, he was not their son. The living entity is the son of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and because he wants to enjoy this material world, the Supreme Lord gives him a chance to enter various bodies. The living entity has no true relationship with the material body he gets from his mother and father. He is part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, but he is allowed to go through different bodies. The body created by the so-called father and mother actually has nothing to do with its so-called creators. Therefore, the living entity flatly denied that Maharaj Chitraketu and his wife were his father and mother. 5. In this material world, which advances like a river that carries away the living entity, all people become friends, relatives, and enemies in due course of time. They also act neutrally, they mediate, they despise one another, and they act in many other relationships. Nonetheless, despite these various transactions, no one is permanently related. Purport. It is a practical experience in this material world that the same person who is one's friend today becomes one's enemy tomorrow. Our relationships as friends or enemies, family men or outsiders, are actually the results of our different dealings. Chitraketu Maharaj was lamenting for his son who is now dead. But he could have considered the situation otherwise. This living entity, he could have thought, was my enemy in my last life, and now, having appeared as my son, he is prematurely leaving just to give me pain and agony. Why should he not consider his dead son his former enemy instead of lamenting, be jubilant because of an enemy's death? As stated in Bhagavad Gita, Prakrite kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvasha. For actually, everything is happening because of our association with the modes of material nature. Therefore, one who is my friend today in association with the mode of goodness may be my enemy tomorrow in association with the mode of passion and ignorance. As the modes of material nature work in illusion, we accept others as friends, enemies, sons, or fathers in terms of the reactions of different dealings under different conditions.
Text 6. Just as gold and other commodities are continually transferred from one place to another in the course of purchase and sale, so the living entity, as a result of his free activities, wanders throughout the entire universe, being injected into different bodies in different species of life by one kind of father after another. Purport. It has already been explained that Chitraketu's son was his enemy in a past life, and had now appeared as his son, just to give him more severe pain. Indeed, the untimely death of the son caused severe lamentation for the father. One may put forward the argument, if the king's son was his enemy, how could the king have so much affection for him? In answer, the example is given that when someone's wealth falls into the hands of an enemy, the money becomes the enemy's friend. Then the enemy can use it for his own purposes. Indeed, he can even use it to harm its previous owner. Therefore, the money belongs neither to the one party nor to the other. The money is always money, but in different situations, it can be used as an enemy or a friend. As explained in Bhagavad Gita, it is not by any father or mother that the living entity is given his birth. The living entity is a completely separate entity from the so-called father and mother. By the laws of nature, the living entity is forced to enter the semen of a father and be injected into the womb of the mother. He is not in control of selecting what kind of father he will accept. Prakrite kriyamanani. The laws of nature force him to go to different fathers and mothers, just like a consumer commodity that is purchased and sold. Therefore, the so-called relationship of father and son is an arrangement of Prakriti, or nature. It has no meaning, and therefore it is called illusion. The same living entity sometimes takes shelter of an animal father and mother, and sometimes a human father and mother. Sometimes he accepts a father and mother among the birds, and sometimes he accepts a demigod father and mother. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu therefore says, Bhanda Bhakti Konni Bhagavan Jeev Guru Krishna Sari Poya Bhakti Lata Bij. Harassed life to life by the laws of nature, the living entity wanders throughout the entire universe in different planets and different species of life. Somehow or other, if he is fortunate enough, he comes in touch with a devotee who reforms his entire life. Then the living entity goes back home, back to Godhead. Therefore it is said, Janame Janame Sabhita Mata Paya Krishna Guru Nahi Mile Bajahari. In the transmigration of the soul through different bodies, everyone, in every form of life, be it human, animal, tree, or demigod, gets a father and mother. This is not very difficult. The difficulty is to obtain a bona fide spiritual master and Krishna. The duty of a human being is to capture the opportunity to come in touch with Krishna's representative, the unified spiritual master. Under the guidance of the spiritual master, the spiritual father, one can return home, back to Godhead. Text 7. A few living entities are born in the human species, and others are born as animals. Although living entities, their relationships are impermanent. An animal may remain in the custody of a human being for some time, and then the same animal may be transferred to the possession of other human beings. As soon as the animal goes away, the former proprietor no longer has a sense of ownership. As long as the animal is in his possession, he certainly has an affinity for it, but as soon as the animal is sold, the affinity is lost. Aside from the fact that the soul transmigrates from one body to another, even in this life, the relationships between living entities are impermanent, as exemplified in this verse. The son of Chitraketu was named Harsha Shoka, or jubilation and lamentation. The living entity is certainly eternal, but because he is covered by a temporary dress, the body, his eternity is not observed. Dehinosmin yata dehe komaram jokam jara. The embodied soul continually passes in this body from boyhood to youth to old age. Thus the bodily dress is impermanent. The living entity, however, is permanent. As an animal is transferred from one owner to another, the living entity, who was the son of Chitraketu, lived as his son for some time, but as soon as he was transferred to another body, the affectionate relationship was broken. As stated in the example given in the previous verse, when one has a commodity in his hands, he considers it his, but as soon as it is transferred, it becomes someone else's commodity. Then one no longer has a relationship with it. He has no affection for it, nor does he lament for it. Text 8. Even one living entity becomes connected with another because of a relationship based on bodies that are perishable, the living entity is eternal. Actually, it is the body that is born or lost, not the living entity. One should not accept that the living entity takes birth or dies. The living being actually has no relationship with so-called fathers and mothers. As long as he appears as the son of a certain father and mother as a result of his past fruitive activities, he has a connection with the body given by that father and mother. Thus he falsely accepts himself as their son and acts affectionately. After he dies, however, the relationship is finished. Under these circumstances, one should not be falsely involved with jubilation and lamentation. Purport. When the entity lives within the material body, he falsely thinks that he is the body, although actually he is not. His relationship with his body and his so-called father and mother are false, illusory conceptions. These illusions continue as long as one is not enlightened about the situation of a living entity. Text 9. The living entity is eternal and imperishable because he actually has no beginning and no end. He never takes birth or dies. He is the basic principle of all types of bodies, yet he does not belong to the bodily category. The living being is so sublime that he is equal in quality to the Supreme Lord. Nonetheless, because he is extremely small, he is prone to illusion by the external energy, and thus he creates various bodies for himself according to his different desires. In this verse, the philosophy of Achinta Bheda Bheda, simultaneous oneness and difference, is described. The living entity is eternal, nitya, like the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But the difference is that the Supreme Lord is the greatest, no one being equal or greater than him, whereas the living entity is sukshma, or extremely small. The Shastra describes that the magnitude of the living entity is 1/10,000th the size of the tip of a hair. The Supreme Lord is all-pervading, adantarasta ramanuchayantadastam. Relatively, if the living entity is accepted as the smallest, there should naturally be inquiry about the greatest. The greatest is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the smallest is the living entity. Another peculiar characteristics of the jiva is that he becomes covered by maya. Atma maya gunai. He is known to be covered by the Supreme Lord's illusory energy. The living entity is responsible for his conditional life in the material world, and therefore he is described as Prabhu, the Master. If he likes, he can come to this material world, and if he likes, he can return home, back to Godhead. Because he wanted to enjoy this material world, the Supreme Personality of Godhead gave him a material body through the agency of the material energy. himself says in Bhagavad Gita 1861, Ichudak Sarvabhutanam Rajajana Tishtati Brahmayan Sarvabhutani Yantrarudhani Mayaya. The Supreme Lord is situated in everyone's heart, O Arjuna, and is directing the wanderings of all living entities, who is seated in a machine made of the material energy. The Supreme Lord gives the living entity a chance to enjoy in this material world as he desires, but he openly expresses his own desire that the living entity give up all material aspirations, fully surrender unto him, and return home, back to Godhead. The living entity is the smallest, Sukshma. Jiva Goswami says in this connection that the living entity within the body is extremely difficult for materialistic scientists to find, although we understand from authorities that the living entity is within the body. The body is different from the living entity. Text 10. For this living entity, no one is dear, nor is anyone unfavorable. He makes no distinction between that which is his own and that which belongs to anyone else. He is one without a second. In other words, he is not affected by friends and enemies, well-wishers, or mischief-mongers. He is only an observer, a witness of the different qualities of men. Purport. As explained in the previous verse, the living entity has the same qualities as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but he has them in minute quantities because he is a small particle, Sukshma, whereas the Supreme Lord is all-pervading and great. For the Supreme Lord there are no friends, enemies, or relatives, for he is completely free from all the disqualifications of ignorance that characterize the conditioned souls. On the other hand, he is extremely kind and favorable to his devotees, and he is not at all satisfied with persons who are envious of his devotees. As the Lord himself confirms in Bhagavad Gita 9:29, Sammohan sarvabhuteshu name dvaishostina priyaha ye bhajanti tumam bhaktya mahite deshu chapraham. I envy no one, nor am I partial to anyone. I am equal to all. Whoever renders service unto me in devotion is a friend, is in me, and I am also a friend to him. The Supreme Lord has no enemy or friend, but he is inclined toward the devotee, who always engages in his devotional service. Similarly, elsewhere in the Gita 16:19, the Lord says, Tanaham Dushtakruram Samsareshu Naradamam Shivam Yajashtamashupam Asurishveva Yodishu. Those who are envious and mischievous, who are the lowest among men, are cast by me into the ocean of material existence, into various demoniac species of life. The Lord is extremely antagonistic toward those who are envious of his devotees. To protect his devotees, the Lord sometimes has to kill his enemies. For example, to protect Prahlad Maharaj, the Lord had to kill his enemy Hiranyakashipu, although Hiranyakashipu attained salvation because of being killed by the Lord. Since the Lord is the witness of everyone's activities, he witnesses the actions of the enemies of his devotees, and he is inclined to punish them. In other cases, however, he simply witnesses what the living entities do and gives the results of one's sinful or pious actions.
11. The Supreme Lord, Atma, the creator of cause and effect, does not accept the happiness and distress that result from fruitive actions. He is completely independent of having to accept a material body, and because he has no material body, he is always neutral. The living entities, being part and parcel of the Lord, possess his qualities in a minute quantity. Therefore, one should not be affected by lamentation. Purport: the conditioned soul has friends and enemies. He is affected by the good qualities and the faults of his position. The Supreme Lord, however, is always transcendental. Because he is the Ishvara, the Supreme Controller, he is not affected by duality. It may therefore therefore be said that he sits in the core of everyone's heart as the neutral witness of the causes and effects of one's activities, good and bad. We should also understand that udasina, neutral, does not mean that he takes no action. Rather, it means that he is not personally affected. For example, a court judge is neutral when two opposing parties appear before him, but he still takes action as the case warrants. To become completely neutral, indifferent to material activities, we should simply seek shelter at the lotus feet of the Supreme Neutral Person. Maharaj Chitraketu was advised that remaining neutral in such trying circumstances as the death of one's son is impossible. Nevertheless, since the Lord knows how to adjust everything, the best course is to depend upon him and do one's duty in devotional service to the Lord. In all circumstances, one should be undisturbed by duality, as stated in Bhagavad Gita. Karmanye vadikaraste ma palishu kadachana ma karma palahitubur mate sangosa karmani. You have a right to perform your prescribed duty, but you are not entitled to the fruits of action. Never consider yourself to be the cause of the results of your activities, and never be attached to not doing your duty. One should execute one's devotional duty, and for the results of one's actions, one should depend upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Interesting, in this last paragraph, it says that he was advised, was Chitraketu, that remaining neutral in such a trying circumstance as the death of one's son is impossible. Nevertheless, since the Lord knows how to adjust everything, the best course is to depend upon him and do one's duty in devotional service to the Lord. But then it says, in all circumstances, one should be undisturbed by duality. But that non-disturbance really is a kind of way of processing the situation by taking shelter of the Lord. It doesn't mean that the person won't be affected. It just means he knows how to take shelter afterwards. And his activities stay steady. Thank you, that was very helpful. Yes?
That reminds me of that purport you quote from the 4th canto, where it says that if one tries to, actually maybe in the verse too, if one tries to adjust that which is not adjustable, more the so then anxiety, yeah. So then one can experience anxiety, but then if they try to adjust it more and more instead of taking shelter, that's the junction point where we have a decision.
Very well said. That's very helpful in putting that verse there. It was excellent. Text number 12. Sri Shukadeva Goswami continued, when the conditioned soul, Jiva, in the form of Maharaj Chitraketu's son, had spoken in this way and then left, Chitraketu and the other relatives of the dead son were all astonished. Thus they cut off the shackles of their affection, which was due to their relationship with him, and gave up their lamentation. 13. After the relatives had discharged their duties by performing the proper funeral ceremonies and burning the dead child's body, they gave up the affection that leads to illusion, lamentation, fear, and pain. Such affection is undoubtedly difficult to give up, but they gave it up very easily. Queen Kutaduti's co-wives, who had poisoned the child, were very much ashamed, and they lost all their bodily luster. While lamenting, O king, they remembered the instructions of Angira and gave up their ambition to bear children. Following the directions of the Brahmanas, they went to the bank of the Jamuna, where they bathed and atoned for their sinful activities. Purport: in this verse, the word Bala Hatya Hata Prabha is to be particularly noted. The practice of killing children has existed in human society for a long time, since time immemorial, but in the days of yore, it was very rarely performed. At the present moment, however, in this age of Kali, abortion, killing of the child within the womb, has become very common, and sometimes a child is even killed after birth. if a woman performs such an abominable act, she gradually loses all her bodily luster. Bala Hatya Hata Prabha. It is also to be noted that the ladies who had committed the sinful act of administering poison to the child were very much ashamed, and according to the directions of the Brahmanas, they had to undergo atonement for killing the child. Any woman who has ever performed such an infamously sinful act must atone for it, but no one is doing that. Under the circumstances any woman who has performed such an infamously sinful act must atone for it, but no one now is doing that. Under the circumstances, the women responsible must suffer in this life and the next. Those who are sincere souls, after hearing this incident, should refrain from such child killing, and should atone for their sinful activities by taking to Krishna consciousness very seriously. If one chants the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra without offenses, all of one's sinful actions are surely atoned for immediately, but one should not commit such deeds again, for that is an offense. 15. Thus enlightened by the instructions of the Brahmanas, Angira and Narada, King Chitraketu became fully aware of spiritual knowledge. As an elephant becomes free from a muddy reservoir of water, King Chitraketu came out of the dark well of family life.
16. The king bathed in the water of the Jamuna, and according to prescribed duties, he offered oblations of water to the forefathers and demigods. Very gravely controlling his senses and mind, he then offered his respects and obeisances to the sons of Lord Brahma, Angira, and Narada. 17. Thereafter, being very much pleased with Chitraketu, who was a self-controlled devotee and surrendered soul, Narada, the most powerful sage, spoke to him the following transcendental instructions. 18 and 19. Narada gave Chitraketu the following mantra. Should we see what that mantra is? Om Namastubhyam Bhagavate Vasudevaya Dhimahi Prajumnaya Yarudaya Namak Sankarshanaya Cha Namo Vijnanamatraya Paramananda Murtaye Atma Ramaya Shantaya Nivritta Dvaita Drishtaye. Narada gave Chitraketu the following mantra. O Lord, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, who are addressed by the Omkara, Pranava, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. O Lord Vasudeva, I meditate upon you. O Lord Prajumna, Lord Aniruddha, and Lord Sankarsana, I offer you my respectful obeisances. O reservoir of spiritual potency, O supreme bliss, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you, who are self-sufficient and most peaceful. O ultimate truth, one without a second, you are realized as Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan, and are therefore the reservoir of all knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. Purport. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that he is Pranabhak Sarvavedeshu, the syllable Om in the Vedic mantras. In transcendental knowledge, the Lord is addressed as Pranava Omkara, which is a symbolic representation of the Lord in sound. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Vasudeva, who is an expansion of Narayana, expands himself as Prajumna, Aniruddha, and Sankarsana. From Sankarsana comes a second Narayana expansion, and from this Narayana comes further expansions of Vasudeva, Prajumna, Sankarsana, and Aniruddha. The Sankarsana in this group is the original cause of the three Purushas, namely Karanodakashayi Vishnu, Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, and Kshirodakashayi Vishnu. Kshirodakashayi Vishnu is situated in each universe in a special planet called Shvetadvip. This is confirmed in the Brahma Samhita, Andantarasta. The word Anda means this universe. Within this universe is a planet called Shvetadvip, where Kshirodakashayi Vishnu is situated. From him come all the incarnations within this universe. As confirmed in the Brahma Samhita, all these forms of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are Advaita, non-different, and they are also Achyuta, infallible. They do not fall down like the conditioned souls. The ordinary living entity is prone to falling into the clutches of Maya, but the Supreme Lord, in his different incarnations and forms, is Achyuta, infallible. Therefore his body is different from the material body possessed by the conditioned soul. The word matra is explained in the Madini dictionary as follows: Matra karna vibhushayam vidimane pradicchade. The word matra, in its different imports, is used to indicate the decoration of the ear, possession, respect, and the possession of a covering. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita 2.14, Matras parshasta konteya chitoshnas sugadukadaha agamat mayano nityas tangstatikshas sabharata. O son of Kunti, the non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress, and their disappearance in due course, are like the appearance and disappearance of winter and summer seasons. They arise from sense perception, O scion of Bharata, and one must learn to tolerate them without being disturbed. In the conditioned state of life, the body is used as our dress, and as one needs different dresses during the summer and winter, we conditioned souls are changing bodies according to our desires. However, because the body of the Supreme Lord is full of knowledge, it needs no covering. The idea that Krishna's body is like ours, in other words, that his body and soul are different, is a misunderstanding. There are no such differences for Krishna, because his body is full of knowledge. Here we receive material bodies because of a lack of knowledge, but because Krishna, Vasudeva, is full of knowledge, there is no difference between his body and his soul. Krishna remembers what he said 40 million years ago to the sun god, but an ordinary being cannot remember what he said the day before yesterday. This is the difference between Krishna's body and our body. Therefore the Lord is addressed as Jnana Matraya Paramananda Murtaye. Because the Lord's body is full of knowledge, he always enjoys transcendental bliss. Indeed, his very form is Paramananda. This is confirmed in the Vedanta Sutra, Anandamayo Vyasat. By nature the Lord is Anandamaya. Whenever we see Krishna, he is always full of Ananda in all circumstances. No one can make him morose. Atmaramaya. He does not need to search for external enjoyment because he is self-sufficient. Shantaya. He has no anxiety. One who has to seek pleasure from other sources is always full of anxiety. Reading that again. One who has to seek pleasure from other sources is always full of anxiety. Karmis, jnanis, and yogis are full of anxiety because they want something. But a devotee does not want anything. He is simply satisfied in the service of the Lord, who is fully blissful. Nivritta dvaita drishtaye. In our conditioned life, our bodies have different parts. But although Krishna apparently has different bodily parts, no part of his body is different from any other part. Krishna can see with his eyes, and Krishna can see without his eyes. Therefore in the Shvetashvatara Upanishad it is said, Pashyatya Chakshu. He can see with his hands and legs. He does not need a particular bodily part to perform a particular action. Ankani yasya sakalendriya viti. He can do anything he desires with any part of his body, and therefore he is called Almighty. Perceiving your personal bliss, you are always transcendental to the waves of material nature. Therefore, my Lord, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. You are the supreme controller of the senses, and your expansions of form are unlimited. You are the greatest, and therefore I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. Purport. This verse analytically differentiates the living entity from the Supreme Lord. The form of the Lord and the form of the conditioned soul are different, because the Lord is always blissful, whereas the conditioned soul is always under the threefold miseries of the material world. The Supreme Lord is Satchidananda Vigraha. He derives Ananda, bliss, from his own self. The Lord's body is transcendental, spiritual, but because the conditioned soul has a material body, he has many bodily and mental troubles. The conditioned soul is always perturbed by attachment and detachment, whereas the Supreme Lord is always free from such dualities. The Lord is the supreme master of all the senses, whereas the conditioned soul is controlled by the senses. The Lord is the greatest, whereas the living entity is the smallest. The living entity is conditioned by the waves of material nature, but the Supreme Lord is transcendental to all actions and reactions. The expansions of the Supreme Lord's body are innumerable, Advaitam Achyutam Anadam Ananta Rupam, but the conditioned soul is limited to only one form. From history we learn that a conditioned soul, by mystic power, can sometimes expand into 8 forms, but the Lord's bodily expansions are unlimited. This means that the bodies of the Supreme Personality of Godhead have no beginning and no end, unlike the bodies of the living entities.
(21) The words and mind of the conditioned soul cannot approach the Supreme Personality of Godhead, for material names and forms are not applicable to the Lord, who is entirely spiritual, beyond the conception of gross and subtle forms. The impersonal Brahman is another of his forms. May he, by his pleasure, protect us. Purport. The impersonal Brahman, which is the effulgence of the Lord, is described in this verse. 22. As pots made completely of earth are situated on earth after being created and are transformed into earth again when broken, this cosmic manifestation is caused by the Supreme Brahman, situated in the Supreme Brahman, and annihilated in the same Supreme Brahman. Therefore, since the Supreme Lord is the cause of Brahman, let us offer him our respectful obeisances. Purport. The Supreme Lord is the cause of the cosmic manifestation. He maintains it after creation, and after annihilation the Lord is the reservoir of everything. 23. The Supreme Brahman emanates from the Supreme Personality of Godhead and expands like the sky. Although untouched by anything material, it exists within and without. Nonetheless, the mind, intelligence, senses, and living force can neither touch him nor know him. I offer him my respectful obeisances. As iron has the power to burn when made red hot in the association of fire, so the body, senses, living force, mind, and intelligence, although merely lumps of matter, can function in their activities when infused with a particle of consciousness by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As iron cannot burn unless heated by fire, the bodily senses cannot act unless favored by the Supreme Brahman. Purport. Red-hot iron can burn, but it cannot burn the original fire. Therefore, the consciousness of the small particle of Brahman is fully dependent on the power of the Supreme Brahman. In Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says, Matak smritir jnanam apohanam cha. From me, the conditioned soul receives memory, knowledge, and forgetfulness. The power for activities comes from the Supreme Lord, and when the Lord withdraws this power, the conditioned soul no longer has energy with which to act through his various senses. The body includes 5 knowledge-acquiring senses, 5 active senses, and the mind. But actually, these are merely lumps of matter. For example, the brain is nothing but matter, but when electrified by the energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the brain can act, just as iron can burn when made red hot by the influence of fire. The brain can act while we are awake or even while we are dreaming, but when we are fast asleep or unconscious, the brain is inactive. Since the brain is a lump of matter, it does not have independent power with which to act. It can act only when favored by the influence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is Brahman or Parabrahman. He's what?
Brahman or Parabrahman.
This is the way to understand how the Supreme Brahman, Krishna, is present everywhere, just as the sunshine is present because of the sun god in the sun globe. The Supreme Lord is called Rishikesh. He is the only conductor of the senses. Unless empowered by his energy, our senses cannot act. In other words, he is the only seer, the only worker, the only listener, and the only active principle or supreme controller. 25. O Transcendental Lord, who are situated in the topmost planet of the spiritual world, your 2 lotus feet are always massaged by a multitude of the best devotees with their lotus bud hands. You are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, complete in 6 opulences. You are the Supreme Person mentioned in the Purusha Sukta prayers. You are the most perfect, self-realized master of all mystic power. Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto you. Purport: it is said that the Absolute Truth is one, but it is manifested in different features as Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. The previous verses described the Brahman and Paramatma features of the Absolute Truth. Now this prayer is offered in Bhakti Yoga to the Absolute Supreme Person. The words used in this regard are Sakala Sattvata Parivriddha. What words are used?
Sakala Sattva Parivriddha.
Correct. The word Sattvata means devotees and Sakala means altogether. Sakala Bashun. The devotees who also have lotus feet serve the lotus feet of the Lord with their lotus hands. The devotees may sometimes not be competent to serve the lotus feet of the Lord, and therefore the Lord is addressed as Parama Parameshtim. He is the Supreme Lord, yet he is very kind to the devotees. No one is competent to serve the Lord, but even if a devotee is not competent, the merciful Lord accepts the humble attempt of the devotee.
Parameshtim. Text 26. Sri Shukadeva Goswami continued. Narada, having become the spiritual master of Chitraketu, instructed him fully in this prayer because Chitraketu was fully surrendered. O King Parikshit, Narada then left with the great sage Angira for the topmost planet, known as Brahmaloka. Purport. When Angira had first come to visit King Chitraketu, he did not bring Narada with him. However, after the death of Chitraketu's son, Angira brought Narada to instruct King Chitraketu about Bhakti Yoga. The difference was that in the beginning, Chitraketu was not in a temperament of renunciation, but after the death of his son, when he was overwhelmed by his great plight, he was awakened to the platform of renunciation by instructions regarding the falsity of this material world and material possessions. It is only at this stage that Bhakti Yoga can be instructed. As long as one is attached to material enjoyment, Bhakti Yoga cannot be understood. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 2.44. Bhogaishvarya prasaktanam taya parita chetasam vyabhasaya mikha buddhir diyate. In the minds of those who are too attached to sense enjoyment and material opulence, and who are bewildered by such things, the resolute determination of devotional service to the Supreme Lord does not take place. As long as one is very much attached to material enjoyment, one cannot concentrate his mind on the subject matter of devotional service. The Krishna consciousness movement is progressing successfully in the Western countries at the present moment because the youth in the West have reached the stage of vairagya, or renunciation. They are practically disgusted with material pleasure from material sources. And this has resulted in a population of hippies throughout the Western countries. Now, if these young people are instructed about Bhakti Yoga, Krishna consciousness, the instructions will certainly be effective. As soon as Chitraketu understood the philosophy of Vairagya Vidya, the knowledge of renunciation, he could understand the process of Bhakti Yoga. In this regard, Srila Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya has said, Vairagya Vidya Nija Bhakti Yoga. Vairagya Vidya and Bhakti Yoga are parallel lines. One is essential for understanding the other. It is also said, Bhakti Parishanubhavo Virakta Anyatra Cha. Advancement in devotional service, or Krishna consciousness, is characterized by increasing renunciation of material enjoyment. Narada Muni is the father of devotional service, and therefore, just to bestow causeless mercy upon King Chitraketu, Angira brought Narada Muni to instruct the king. These instructions were extremely effective. Anyone who follows in the footsteps of Narada Muni is certainly a pure devotee. Text 27. Fasting and drinking only water, Chitraketu for 1 week continuously chanted with great care and attention the mantra given by Narada Muni. Text 28. O King Parikshit, after only 1 week of repeatedly practicing the mantra received from the spiritual master, Chitraketu achieved the rule of the planet of the Vidyadharas as an intermediate product of his spiritual advancement in knowledge. Purport. If a devotee, after being initiated, adheres rigidly to the instructions of the spiritual master, he is naturally endowed with the material opulences of Vidyadhara Adipatyam and similar posts as byproducts. A devotee need not practice yoga, karma, or jnana to achieve a successful result. Devotional service alone is competent to award a devotee all material power. A pure devotee, however, is never attached to material power, although he gets it very easily without personal endeavor. Chitraketu received this side benefit of his devotional service, which he rigidly performed in accordance with the instructions of Narada. 29. Thereafter, within a very few days, by the influence of that mantra that Chitraketu had practiced, his mind became increasingly enlightened in spiritual progress, and he attained shelter at the lotus feet of Anantadeva. Purport. A devotee's ultimate achievement is to take shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord in any one of the planets in the spiritual sky. As a result of rigid execution of devotional service, a devotee receives all material opulences if these are required. Otherwise, the devotee is not interested in material opulences, nor does the Supreme Lord award them. When a devotee is actually engaged in the devotional service of the Lord, his apparently material opulences are not material. They are spiritual. They are all spiritual. For example, if a devotee spends money to construct a beautiful and costly temple, the construction is not material, but spiritual. Nirbandha Krishna Sambandhe Yuktam Vairagam Uchyate. A devotee's mind is never diverted to the material side of the temple. The bricks, stone, and wood used in the construction of the temple are spiritual, just as the deity, although made of stone, is not stone, but the Supreme Personality of God himself. The more one advances in spiritual consciousness, the more he can understand the elements of devotional service. Nothing in devotional service is material. Everything is spiritual. Consequently, a devotee is awarded so-called material opulence for spiritual advancement. This opulence is an aid to help the devotee advance toward the spiritual kingdom. Thus, Maharaja Chitraketu remained in material opulence as a Vidyadharapati, master of the Vidyadharas, and by executing devotional service, he became perfect within a few days and returned home back to Godhead, taking shelter of the lotus feet of Lord Shesha Ananta. A karmi's material opulence and a devotee's material opulence are not on the same level. Srila Madhvacharya comments in this way: Anyantayaminim Vishnum, Anyantarayaminam Anyatayaminam Vishnum Upasanya Samipagaha Bhavet Yogyataya Tasya Brahma Prapnuyan Naraha. By worshipping Lord Vishnu, one can get whatever he desires, but a pure devotee never asks Lord Vishnu for any material profit. Instead, he serves Lord Vishnu without material desires, and is therefore ultimately transferred to the spiritual kingdom. In this regard, Srila Viraraghava Acharya comments, Yateshta gatir yatartha Yateshta gatir ityartha. By worshipping Vishnu, a devotee can get whatever he likes. Maharaj Chitraketu wanted only to return home, back to Godhead, and therefore he achieved success in that way. Text 30. Upon reaching the shelter of Lord Shesha, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Chitraketu saw that he was as white as the white fibers of a lotus flower. He was dressed in bluish garments and adorned with a brilliantly glittering helmet, armlets, belt, and bangles. His face was smiling, and his eyes were reddish. He was surrounded by such exalted, liberated persons as Sanat Kumara.
(31) As soon as Maharaj Chitraketu saw the Supreme Lord, he was cleansed of all material contamination and situated in his original Krishna consciousness, being completely purified. He became silent and grave, and because of love for the Lord, tears fell from his eyes, and his hairs stood on end. With great devotion and love, he offered his respectful obeisances unto the original personality of Godhead. Purport: the word Tadarshana Dwasta Samasta Kilbisha. Dwasta Samasta is very important in this verse. If one regularly sees the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the temple, one will gradually be disinfected of all material desires simply by visiting the temple and seeing the deity. When one is freed from all the results of sinful activities, one will be purified, and with a healthy mind completely cleansed, he will increasingly make progress in Krishna consciousness. 32. With tears of love and affection, Chitraketu repeatedly moistened the resting place of the Supreme Lord's lotus feet. Because his voice was choked in ecstasy, for a considerable time he was unable to utter any of the letters of the alphabet to offer the Lord suitable prayers. Purport: all the letters of the alphabet and the words constructed by those letters are meant for offering prayers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Maharaj Chitraketu had the opportunity to offer prayers to the Lord by composing nice verses from the letters of the alphabet, but because of his ecstasy, for a considerable time, he could not join those letters to offer prayers to the Lord. As stated in Srimad Bhagavatam 1.5.22, Idam hipumsam tapasashutasya va shristasya suktasya tabuddhidattayo avichutorta kavibir nirupito yaduttamashloka gunarnavarnanam. If one has scientific, philosophical, political, economic, or any other abilities and wants perfection in his knowledge, he should offer prayers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead by composing first-class poetry or engaging his talents in the service of the Lord. Chitraketu wanted to do this, but he was unable because of his loving ecstasy. Therefore, he had to wait for a considerable time before he could offer prayers. Text number 33. Thereafter, by controlling his mind with his intelligence and thus restricting his senses from external engagements, he recovered suitable words with which to express his feelings. Thus he began offering prayers to the Lord, who is the personification of the Holy Scriptures, the Sattvata Samhitas, like the Brahma Samhita and the Narada Pancharatra, and who is the spiritual master of all. He offered his prayers as follows. Purport. One cannot offer prayers to the Lord with mundane words. One must become spiritually advanced by controlling the mind and senses. Then he can find suitable words to offer in prayers to the Lord. Quoting the following verse from the Padma Purana, Srila Sanatana Goswami forbids us to sing any song not sung by authorized devotees. Avaishnava Mukon Girnam Putam Harikatamritam Shravananaiva Kartavyam Sharpochishta Yatapaya. The words or songs of a person not fixed in Vaishnava behavior, not strictly following the rules and regulations and chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. The words of or songs of a person not fixed in Vaishnava behavior, not strictly following the rules and regulations and chanting the Hare Krishna Maha. I see. It was a little edit there, eh? Okie dokie. The words or songs of a person... You can't change it. The words or songs of a person not fixed in Vaishnava behavior, not strictly following the rules and regulations, and not chanting the Hare Krishna mantra should not be accepted by pure devotees. The words Sattvata Shastra Vigraham indicate that the Sat Chit Ananda body of the Lord can never be accepted to be made of Maya. Devotees do not offer prayers to the Lord in an imaginary form. The existence of the Lord's form is supported by all Vedic literature. I would thought you would like to have a moment right now. Okay, let's start over. Mic 'em up.
Mic 'em up, mic 'em up. I'd like to take a moment to offer our deep appreciation to Ajay Maharaj, who's going to be here, by the way, on the 9th, maybe for a week, and Dravida Prabhu, who's making these kinds of... I mean, do you realize how this number of pages, catching something like that, you have to be very precise and very controlled in your mind, very intelligent and very, very expert to do this work.
Well, it gets a lot of them from you.
I think I get a
No,
lot
I
of
mean,
that
with the
from him.
devotees who are going through the books carefully, reading them, they find these things because they're really hard to find, no matter how many times you go through.
Okay, I'll surrender one thing. Because I'm reading out loud like this every day with different devotees wherever I go, yes, sometimes things do come out. When you read
There you go.
out loud together, things come out. This is the way to do it.
Okay. Thank
What you doing, bro?
Thank you.
What you doing, bro?
Okay. Sattvata Shastra Vigraham, Sakchidananda. And we also had the other statement that was in the previous verse. What? Tadarshana Dwashta Samasta. Dwashta Samasta. 34. Chitraketu said, O unconquerable Lord, although you cannot be conquered by anyone, you are certainly conquered by devotees who have control of the mind and senses. They can keep you under their control because you are causelessly merciful to devotees who desire no material profit from you. Indeed, you give yourself to them, And because of this, you also have full control over your devotees. That really reminds me of Samaham Sarvabhuteshu Nami Dveshos Dinapriya Ye Bhajanti Tumam Bhaktya Mai Teteshu Chapyam. And anyway, purport. The Lord and all the devotees both conquer. The Lord is conquered by the devotees, and the devotees are conquered by the Lord. Because of being conquered by one another, they both derive transcendental bliss from their relationship. The highest perfection of this mutual conquering is exhibited by Krishna and the gopis. The gopis conquered Krishna, and Krishna conquered the gopis. Thus, whenever Krishna played his flute, he conquered the minds of the gopis, and without seeing the gopis, Krishna could not be happy. Other transcendentalists, such as jnanis and yogis, cannot conquer the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Only pure devotees can conquer him. Pure devotees are described as samamati, which means that they never deviate from devotional service under any circumstances. It is not that devotees worship the Supreme Lord only when happy. They worship him even when in distress. Happiness and distress do not hamper the process of devotional service. Therefore, Srimad Bhagavatam says that devotional service is a haitukiya pratiyata, unmotivated and uninterrupted. When a devotee offers devotional service to the Lord without any motive, anya abhilashita shunyam, his service cannot be hampered by any material condition, a pratiyata. Thus, a devotee who offers service in all conditions of life can conquer the Supreme Personality of Godhead. A special distinction between devotees and the other transcendentalists, namely jnanis and yogis, is that jnanis and yogis artificially try to become one with the Supreme, whereas devotees never aspire for such an impossible accomplishment. Devotees know that their position is to be eternally servants of the Supreme Lord and never to be one with him. Therefore, they are called samamati or jitatma. They detest oneness with the Supreme. They have no lusty desires for oneness. Instead, their desire is to be freed from all material hankering. Therefore, they are called nishkama, desireless. A living entity cannot exist without desires, but desires that can never be fulfilled are called kama, lusty desires. Now that's a flat-out winner. Come on. Take it from the top. Start the canto over. Devotees know that their position is to be eternally servants of the Supreme Lord and never to be one with him. Therefore, they are called samamati or jitatma. They detest oneness with the Supreme. They have no lusty desires for oneness. Instead, their desire is to be freed from all material hankering. Therefore, they are called nishkama or desireless. A living entity cannot exist without desires, but desires that can never be fulfilled are called kama, lusty desires. There it is. We found it. The Holy Grail. Kamaistaiste hrita jnana. Because of lusty desires, non-devotees are deprived of their intelligence. Thus, they are unable to conquer the Supreme Lord. Whereas devotees, being freed from such unreasonable desires, can conquer the Lord. Such devotees are also conquered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because they are pure, being free from all material desires, they fully surrender to the Supreme Lord, and therefore the Lord conquers them. Such devotees never aspire for liberation. They simply desire to serve the lotus feet of the Lord. Because they serve the Lord without desires for remuneration, they can conquer the mercy of the Lord. The Lord is by nature very merciful, and when he sees that his servant is working without desires for material profit, naturally he is conquered. Devotees are always engaged in service. Savamana Krishna Padara Vindayor Vachamsi Vaikunta Gunarna Varnane. All the activities of their senses are engaged in the service of the Lord. Because of such devotion, the Lord gives himself to his devotees as if they could use him for any purpose they might desire. Of course, devotees have no purpose other than to serve. When a devotee fully surrenders and has no aspiration for material profit, the Lord certainly gives him all opportunities for service. This is the position of the Lord when conquered by his devotees. My new favorite purport. You may. Please proceed.
It's related to Samepra's question in the previous session.
The previous yuga.
Yeah. I'm just wondering, this idea of being free
You got to hold that a little
being
more.
free from motive, that
Being free from what?
motive or personal agenda.
Personal
we
agenda.
may be wanting to do something for Prabhupada or for Krishna, but really it's not just for them. We may have some patishta, some ego there of proving ourselves or some personal ambition. So how to purify ourselves from that? First of all, how to actually see if that's the case, and second, how to get purified from that.
Srila Bhaktisiddhanta once had a disciple who was very successful in a particular project, and some of his godbrothers complained to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta about him, and they claimed that he had some material motive in doing it. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta called him in and said, "Okay, I'm transferring you to another project." And he said, "Okay, Guru Maharaj, ready to go." And he said, "Okay, you can stay." And it's like the banker, the bank teller. He's dealing with the money all day long, but he never thinks that any of it is his. If he takes $1 out of the till and says this is mine, then he's disqualified as a teller. It's a test to see if we have that freedom from entitlement, that this is mine. And also, it's just as a side note, if somebody doesn't have that, then it's amazing how much service he or she can get done. Because I've noticed that that's the main thing that holds up service, is having to put one's personal stamp on it. Wait a minute, I didn't think of that one. How come this person gets to do it and not me? And it's like, that subtle energy, you don't even say anything, but it holds everything back. It slows down the whole process. But you'll find devotees that don't have that they just want to see it expand. They want the right thing to happen. And they're effusive. They can pour out so much to other people and not hold it back. And we could detect it in ourselves also. And it's also, my realization is that any speck of motive, personal motive, it always comes out somewhere. It's not like you can hide it. It's either now or in another millennium, but it's going to come out. It always becomes manifest. And also, Krishna knows how to purify it too. I mean, Prabhupada had to work with a lot of very advanced souls who had appeared, obviously, to help him spread the movement, but they came from different kinds of backgrounds, and he allowed them to move forward with their personal motives and even encourage them in different ways, according to their natures, to go ahead and use those, knowing full well that if they continued in devotional service, yam krodha kama sahaja pranayadi bhiti vatsalya moha guru gaura vasevya bhavai santintitasya sadrisham tanamapurete govindamari purusham tamaham vajami, that they gradually become purified. And there are numerous verses that Samyaprasa can rattle off for us that prove this fact, that if you go on in devotional service, even if you have some motive, then better keep going and ask Krishna for it, because he'll ultimately purify it, starting with the kama sarvakama va and satyam dishiti artitam nrinam. Finished.
Hare Krishna.
Om
Tat Sat. How wonderful that was. I was thinking while you were speaking that we also heard in, I don't remember exactly where it was because I don't have memories like you guys, but I do remember that somewhere we heard that you can't have a pinch and go back to Godhead, and therefore a person who actually goes back to Godhead is very rare in this world. manushanam sasreshu kaschit yadati siddhaye yadatam abhisiddhanam kaschin mam veditat buddha. Even if you're perfect in the sense that you know you're not your body, you realized still to understand Krishna in truth. And this last thing we heard, how Krishna conquers the devotee and the devotees conquer Krishna, and there's a mutual conquering going on here, in a mutual attempt to try to serve the other, that's very rare, very rarely achieved. So it seems that this is special mercy. And the other simple example that Prabhupada gives is that if you want to make an iron rod fire, you just have to put it into the fire. That's all you have to do. You don't have to do anything else. And if you leave it there long enough, it becomes fire. And if someone's mental and says, no, it's not actually fire, it's just a rod that's been, heated up, then Prabhupada would say, okay, touch it. If it's not fire, just touch it. It's fire. So by keeping ourselves constantly, the less we have material motive, the more we are able to absorb ourselves in devotional service, and the more we absorb ourselves in devotional service, the more we will get a taste for associating with and seeking out devotees who are pure devotees, and by that contact, by keeping ourselves in that contact, then we will become pure. Hare Krishna.
Yes, Prabhu.
Provided, of course, we heard that in due course of time, by performing devotional service, these things will eventually be nullified. But if so happened that somebody notice such problem, such issue with somebody else, let's say his friend or something like this, and what are the options to, in the most proper, appropriate, soft, or I don't know, way to help this devotee so that he can...
You could make up an allegorical story. So there was this person, like a brahmachari. He lived in days of yore. He looked very much like you. He had 2 kids just like you had. It's funny, the preaching strategies of the Bhagavatam, you can write a thesis paper about that. Or all the ways that Narada Muni preaches. Because even with just Narada, if you go through and make a summary study in the Bhagavatam, you'll find that with each person he has a different approach. It's not one size fits all. I mean, like with this is a big setup, and Angira and Narada work together, tag team, to get a teachable moment. And then with Prachinabhari, he told this whole allegory. I mean, that's a really powerful way to teach somebody, tell it's not about you, it's about this other guy. And then they just kind of get on board after a while and go, God, that's just like me, but it's not me, but I should improve myself. So I think it's really, it's not stereotype. Habib Prabhu had a...
I want to go back a little bit to this living entity he could have thought was my enemy in my last life, and now having appeared as my son is prematurely leaving just to give me pain and agony. And there's this story of Srila Prabhupada that he was attacked practically by a yogi in one of his meetings with a yogi. The yogi started to blast at him, and the main devotees who were taking care of Prabhupada at that moment, they really wanted to behead this gentleman, and he left, and then they went and spoke to Prabhupada. Prabhupada, this person really insulted you. He said, yes, I was his enemy in my previous life. I committed an offense in my previous life. Did you know that?
I never heard that before. It's really instructive.
When he was in Delhi, and he was, distributing his Back to Godhead magazines or leaflets, and all of a sudden he got gored by a bull.
It's a cow, thrashed by a cow.
Cow, yeah.
Cow with horns.
Cow with horns, and he got he said it was a potentially fatal wound. And he thought, what has happened now? He thought something similar. I don't remember the exact.
He said, what is this?
Yeah.
What is this? What is it? He had just taken sannyas, and then he got thrashed by a cow, and he said, I was lying on the footpath, and I was thinking, what is this? Krishna, what is this? He also said when he lost all his business and his money, that and the devotees in the class laughed about it, about how Krishna took everything, and Prabhupada said, no, when Krishna takes everything away, you become very morose. Indeed. Prabhu?
I just want to add, related to Pratishta, specifically a verse which I remember by Raghunath Das Goswami in Manah Shiksha. He says that this specifically with kapata, with deceit, is very shameless. It's difficult to notice by yourself. So you need the help of a general in the army of devotees.
Yeah, I've seen that before. Devotees that have a big stature and somehow they're empowered, and if you get around them, they immediately pick out who's the nail that's sticking up, and they pound it down. Like in Japan, there's this saying, as people try to conform there, that's if you're the nail that sticks up, you get pounded down. Do you know it in Japanese? No. So then I can relate to that, because I know certain devotees that are like that, and that they'll point it out. They're intuitive also. As soon as you walk in the room, like, you're puffed up.
On the
he came out while I was in Spain. He said, I couldn't be successful. Well, Julio Iglesias, when I was in Spain, he became one of the most popular, singers in the history of music, isn't it? Julio Iglesias in the world. He was really huge, and he said while I was in Spain, I heard him say that he couldn't be successful in Spain because every time he started to get up, they would smash him. The press and people, they would just he couldn't be successful. It was a culture. It was the nature of the culture. He's from Spain. He knows about this. It's the same thing as in Japan. Huh?
Okay. Last point.
We were talking the other day that you can only see faults in others if the faults are in yourself. And I don't kind of understand or agree with that statement, because as you said now, like those general people who are very refined in consciousness, they can see, they can discriminate so well about where people are. If something is sticking out, they can point it out, and not necessarily that's in them.
Well, no one said that's an absolute statement.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that it's just that if somebody have the fault themselves, then when they point it out, they're able to do it in such a way that the person will actually be able to improve themselves. And that's the spirit of the verse, that verse number 5, Krishneti yasya giritam manasadriyata, that ends in saying that such a person, nindadi shunya hridamitsita sangalabhya, no longer has the propensity to criticize others, because the fault isn't there in him or hers, but still sees it. But then when such a person speaks, it's for the benefit of the person. It's not out of envy, so the quality of the sound's different, and it helps the person to improve, rather than you're thinking like, you see that same fault in them that's in you, so you react to it. Yeah. Okay, really the last one.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
There's a story of and it can be applied to any nationality. The basket of crabs doesn't have a lid. And when
I don't know the story.
When somebody was asking, why is there no lid? And they said, they won't get out because the others won't allow it. They will drag him down.
Is that right?
Yeah.
They said, like, you're not getting out?
Yeah.
The ones on top?
Yeah, whoever wants
the ones
to
at the bottom, hold on.
Yeah, they'll catch him and drag him down. So they don't have to put a lid on.
Get out of here. Are you serious?
I'm not a fisherman, so I can't, I don't know what the mana for this is, but I've heard it from different cultures and with different animals.
Yeah?
So
let's see if it's true.
There's a similarity that happened also in South America. I don't know if this is too mundane, but there was a time when Michael Jackson and all those artists, when they We Are the World, right? And then the Spanish artists also did something like that. And then the difference in the Spanish environment, everybody wants to show off and to try to get in, be the first one and so on. So there was the same idea that those who are coming up, the others are going to pull it down. This is not the first time I hear that, but I didn't hear it in the crowd compartment.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's like the whole big pot of the material world, right? Yeah, and it really illustrates envy in a potent way.
It illustrates the statement that everyone in the material world is envious of everyone else. That's what it illustrates.
Nobody is Messiah in his own country.
Yeah. Okay, how would you feel if I continue and just finish the last verse before we take our break?
Yeah.
Everybody agree to that?
Yes.
Okay, let's do it then. This is text number 35, if I'm not incorrect. 35, my dear Lord, this cosmic manifestation and its creation, maintenance, and annihilation are all but your opulences. Since Lord Brahma and the other creators are nothing but small portions of a portion of you, their partial power to create does not make them God, Ishvara. Their consciousness of themselves as separate lords is therefore merely false prestige. It is not valid.
Whoa.
Purport. A devotee who has fully surrendered to the lotus feet of the Lord knows very well that the creative energy of the living entities, from Lord Brahma down to the small ant, exists because the living entities are part and parcel of the Lord. In Bhagavad Gita 15:7, the Lord says, Mamaivam shoji loke jiva bhuta sanatana. The living entities in this conditioned world are my eternal fragmental parts. The living entities are nothing but very small portions of the Supreme Spirit, like sparks of a fire. But because they are part of the Supreme, they have a creative quality in a very minute quantity. The so-called scientists of the modern materialistic world are proud because they have created modern facilities like great airplanes. But the credit for creating the airplanes should go to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, not to the scientists who have invented or created the so-called wonderful products. The first consideration is the intelligence of the scientist. One must be elevated by the dictation of the Supreme Lord, who says in Bhagavad Gita, Matak smritir jnanam apohanam cha. From me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. Because the Supreme Lord as Supersoul sits within the core of every living entity's heart, the dictation by which one advances in scientific knowledge or creative faculties comes from him. Furthermore, the ingredients to manufacture wonderful machines like airplanes are also supplied by the Lord, not by the scientists. Because the airplane was created, its ingredients already existed. Before the airplane was created, its ingredients already existed, having been caused by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But when the manifested creation of the airplane is ruined, the remaining debris is a problem for the so-called creators. Another example is that the West is creating many automobiles. The ingredients for these cars are supplied, of course, by the Supreme Lord, and the intelligence for the so-called creation is also supplied by the Lord. Ultimately, when the cars are demolished, the so-called creators are faced with the problem of what to do with their ingredients. The actual creator, the original creator, is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Only in the interim does someone create something with intelligence supplied by the Lord, and later the creation again becomes a problem. Therefore, the so-called creator is not to be credited with the act of creation. The only credit goes to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is rightly stated herein that the credit for all the opulences of creation, maintenance and annihilation belongs to the Supreme Lord, not to the living entities. And that, definitely, without a doubt, brings us to the cow break. We will be back here, ready to go, goodness gracious, at 5:30. Okay, 5:25. 5:25. Back here at 5:25. Okay?
Okay.
Go Premanande.
Haribol.
You exist in the beginning, middle, and end of everything, from the most minute particle of the cosmic manifestation, the atom, to the gigantic universes and total material energy. Nonetheless, you are eternal, having no beginning, end, or middle. You are perceived to exist in these three phases, and thus you are permanent. When the cosmic manifestation does not exist, you exist as the original potency. Purport. The Brahma Samhita 533 says, Advaitamachuttamanadamananta rupam adyam purana purusham navajovanam cha vedeshu durlabham adurlabham atma bhaktau govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. I worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Govinda, Krishna, who is the original person, absolute, infallible, without beginning, although expanded into unlimited forms, still the same original, the oldest, and the person always appearing as a fresh youth. Such eternal, blissful, all-knowing forms of the Lord cannot be understood even by the best Vedic scholars, but they are always manifest to pure, unalloyed devotees. The Supreme Personality of Godhead has no cause, for He is the cause of everything. The Lord is beyond the workings of cause and effect. He is eternally existing. In another verse, the Brahma Samhita says, Andantarastara paramanu charantarastam. The Lord exists within the gigantic universe and within the atom. The descent of the Lord into the atom and the universe indicates that without His presence, nothing could factually exist. Scientists say that water is a combination of hydrogen and oxygen, but when they see a vast ocean, they are puzzled about where such a quantity of hydrogen and oxygen could have come from. They think that everything evolved from chemicals, but where did the chemicals come from? That they do not know. Since the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the cause of all causes, He can produce immense quantities of chemicals to create a situation for chemical evolution. We actually see that chemicals are produced from living entities. For example, a lemon tree produces many tons of citric acid. The citric acid is not the cause of the tree, rather the tree is the cause of the acid. Similarly, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the cause of everything. He is the cause of the tree that produces the citric acid. Bija mam sarvabhutanam. Devotees can see that the original potencies causing the cosmic manifestation are not in chemicals, but in the Supreme Personality of Godhead, for He is the cause of the chemicals. Everything is caused or manifested by the energy of the Supreme Lord, and when everything is annihilated or dissolved, the original potency enters the body of the Supreme Lord. Therefore this verse says, Adavante picha satvanam yadruvam tad evantaralepi. The word dhruvam means permanent. The permanent reality is Krishna, not this cosmic manifestation. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, aham adir hidevanam and mattak sarvam pavartate. Krishna is the original cause of everything. Arjuna recognized Lord Sri Krishna as the original person, Purusham Shaswatam Divyam Adideva Majam Vibhum, and the Brahma Samhita describes him as the original person, Govindam Adi Purusham. He is the cause of all causes, whether in the beginning, at the end, or in the middle. Text 37. Every universe is covered by 7 layers: earth, water, fire, air, sky, the total energy, and false ego, each 10 times greater than the previous one. There are innumerable universes besides this one, and although they are unlimitedly large, they move about like atoms in you. Therefore you are called unlimited, Ananta. Purport. The Brahma Samhita says, Yasyaika nishvasita kalamatavalamya jivanti loma vilajat jagarantanataha Vishnur mahansa iha yasya kala vishesho govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. The origin of the material creation is Mahavishnu, who lies in the causal ocean. While he sleeps in that ocean, millions of universes are generated as he exhales, and they are all annihilated when he inhales. This Mahavishnu is a plenary portion of Vishnu, Govinda, Yasya Kala Visheshaha. The word Kala refers to a plenary portion of a plenary portion. From Krishna or Govinda comes Balaram. From Balaram comes Sankarshan. From Sankarshan, Narayana. And from Narayana, the second Sankarsana. From the second Sankarsana, Mahavishnu. From Mahavishnu, Garbhodakashaya Vishnu. And from Garbhodakashaya Vishnu, Kshirodakashaya Vishnu. Kshirodakashaya Vishnu controls every universe. This gives an idea of the meaning of Ananta, unlimited. What is to be said of the unlimited potency and existence of the Lord? This verse describes the coverings of the universe, Saptabir Dashaguno Tarayar Andakoshaha. The first covering is earth, the second is water, the third is fire, the fourth is air, the fifth is sky, the sixth is the total material energy, and the seventh is the false ego. Beginning with the covering of earth, each covering is 10 times greater than the previous one. Thus we can only imagine how great each universe is, and there are many millions of universes. As confirmed by the Lord himself in Bhagavad Gita 10:42, Atava bahunaitena kim gatena tavarjana vishtabhyaham idam kritsnam ekangshena stato jigat. But what need is there, Arjuna, for all this detailed knowledge? With a single fragment of myself, I pervade and support this entire universe. The entire material world manifests only 1/4 of the Supreme Lord's energy. Therefore he is called Ananta. Text 38. O Lord, O Supreme, unintelligent persons who thirst for sense enjoyment and who worship various demigods are no better than animals in the human form of life. Because of their animalistic propensities, they fail to worship your lordship, and instead they worship the insignificant demigods, who are but small sparks of your glory. With the destruction of the entire universe, including the demigods, the benedictions received from the demigods also vanish, just like the nobility of a king is no longer in power, just like the nobility when a king is no longer in power. Purport. Bhagavad Gita 7:20 says, Kamaistaistarityajnana prapadyantenya devataha. Those whose minds are distorted by material desires surrender unto the demigods. Similarly, this verse condemns worship of the demigods. We may show our respect to the demigods, but the demigods are not worshipable. The intelligence of those who worship the demigods is lost, ritta-jnana, because these worshippers do not know that when the entire material cosmic manifestation is annihilated, the demigods, who are the departmental heads of that manifestation, will be vanquished. When the demigods are vanquished, the benedictions given by the demigods to unintelligent men will also be vanquished. Therefore, a devotee should not hanker to obtain material opulence by worshipping the demigods, but should engage in the service of the Lord, who will satisfy all his desires. Akama sarvakamo va mokshakama udadadi stivrena yogena yajeta purusham padam. Whether full of all material desires, free from material desires, or desiring liberation, a person who has broader intelligence must by all means worship the Supreme Whole, the Personality of Godhead. This is the duty of a perfect human being. One who has the shape of a human being, but whose actions are nothing but those of an animal, is called Narapashu, or Dvipadapashu, a two-legged animal. A human being who is not interested in Krishna consciousness is condemned herewith as a Narapashu. Text 39. O Supreme Lord, if persons obsessed with material desires for sense gratification through material opulence worship you, who are the source of all knowledge and are transcendental to material qualities, they are not subject to material rebirth, just as sterilized or fried seeds do not produce plants. Living entities are subjected to the repetition of birth and death because they are conditioned by material nature. But since you are transcendental, one who is inclined to associate with you in transcendence escapes the conditions of material nature. Purport. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 4:9, wherein the Lord says, Janmakarma chame divyam evam yo veti tatmataha taktva deham punarjanma naitimam iti sorjuna. One who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna. If one simply engages in Krishna consciousness to understand Krishna, he surely becomes immune to the process of repeated birth and death. As clearly stated in Bhagavad Gita, Tyaktva deham punarjanma naiti. Such a person, simply by engaging in Krishna consciousness or understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, becomes quite fit to return home, back to Godhead. Even those who are obsessed with material desires may also come to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead so steadily that they go back to Godhead. The fact is that if one comes to Krishna consciousness, although he may have material desires, the fact is that if one comes to Krishna consciousness, although he may have many material desires, he becomes increasingly attracted to the lotus feet of Krishna through associating with the Supreme Lord by chanting his holy name. The Supreme Lord and his holy name are identical. Thus he becomes uninterested in attachment to material enjoyment. The perfection of life is to be uninterested in material enjoyment and interested in Krishna. If one comes to Krishna consciousness somehow or other, even for material gain, the result is that he will be liberated. Kamat dveshat bhayat snehat, whether for the satisfaction of material desires, because of the influence of envy, because of fear, because of affection, or because of any other reason. If one comes to Krishna, his life is successful. I'll read that again. Too much nice. Whether for the satisfaction of material desires, because of the influence of envy, because of fear, because of affection, or because of any other reason, if one comes to Krishna, his life is successful. Text 40. O unconquerable one, when you spoke about Bhagavata Dharma, which is the uncontaminated religious system for achieving the shelter of your lotus feet, that was your victory. Persons who have no material desires, like the Kumaras, who were self-satisfied sages, worship you to be liberated from material contamination. In other words, they accept the process of Bhagavata Dharma to achieve shelter at your lotus feet. Purport. As stated by Srila Rupa Goswami in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Anya Bilashita Shunyam Jnana Karma Dhanavritam Anukul Yena Krishnanu Shilanam Bhakta Uttama. One should render transcendental loving service to the Supreme Lord favorably and without desires for material profit or gain through fruitive activities or philosophical speculation. That is called pure devotional service.
You also have Madhya 19.167 in brackets.
Yes, yes.
Because that's where it also appears.
Yes, that means when it's in brackets, it's put in there by the Veda base. It might not be in the book. Is it in the book? Yeah. The parentheses. One is parentheses, the other is brackets. Brackets means it's not in the book and it's put there by the Veda base to help us go to the place. Therefore it's blue, and if you click on it, it'll take you to that quote. And sometimes we say it is as quoted in. Yeah, it's a folio. It's a folio program. It's a folio. It was Eddie Gavspec. Eddie such and such did it. You can't say that. It's Eddie. What's his name? Eddie, can't remember his name. Eddie something whack. The Narada Pancharatra also says, Sarvapadi nirambinir muktam tatpadet vena nirmalam rishikeshana rishikesha sevanam bhaktiruchate. One should be free from all material designations and cleansed of all material contamination. He should be restored to his pure identity, in which he engages his senses in the service of the proprietor of the senses. That is called devotional service. This is also called Bhagavata Dharma. Without material aspirations, one should simply serve Krishna as advised in Bhagavad Gita, Narada Pancharatra, and Srimad Bhagavatam. Bhagavata Dharma is the process of religion enunciated by pure devotees, direct representatives of the Supreme Personality of Godhead like Narada, Shukadeva Goswami, and their humble servants in the disciplic succession. By understanding Bhagavata Dharma, one immediately becomes free from material contamination. Living entities who are part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are loitering in this material world, suffering. When they are instructed by the Lord Himself about Bhagavata Dharma and they adopt it, that is victory for the Lord, for He then reclaims these fallen souls. Shall I read that again? That was too much nice. When they are instructed, living entities who are part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are loitering in this material world, suffering. When they are instructed by the Lord Himself about Bhagavad Dharma and they adopt it, that is victory for the Lord, for He then reclaims these fallen souls. A devotee following the principles of Bhagavad Dharma feels very much obligated to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He can understand the difference between life without Bhagavad Dharma and life with Bhagavad Dharma, and thus he ever remains obliged to the Lord. Taking to Krishna consciousness and bringing fallen souls to Krishna consciousness is victory for Lord Krishna. Savai pungsang pado dharmo yato bhaktir dadhoksaje akaitik apriyata yayatma supersediti. The supreme occupation, dharma, for all humanity is that by which men can attain to loving devotional service unto the transcendent Lord. Such devotional service must be unmotivated and uninterrupted in order to completely satisfy the self. Srimad Bhagavatam 126. Therefore, Srimad Bhagavatam is the pure, transcendental process of religion.
In that last purport, Prabhupada said that the living entities are loitering in the material world. So I wanted to read you the definition of the word loiter. Loiter, to delay an activity with idle steps and pauses. 2, to remain in an area for no obvious reason. 41. Being full of contradictions, all forms of religion but Bhagavat Dharma work under conceptions of fruitive results and distinctions of you and I, and yours and mine. The followers of Srimad Bhagavatam have no such consciousness. They are all Krishna conscious, thinking that they are Krishna's and Krishna is theirs. There are other low-class religious systems which are contemplated for the killing of enemies or the gain of mystic power. But such religious systems, being full of passion and envy, are impure and temporary. Because they are all full of envy, they are full of your religion. Purport: Bhagavad Dharma has no contradictions. Conceptions of your religion and my religion are completely absent from Bhagavad Dharma. Bhagavad Dharma means following the orders given by the Supreme Lord Bhagavan. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, Sarva Dharman Parityaja Mamekam Sharanam Braja. God is one and God is for everyone. Therefore, everyone must surrender to God. That is the pure conception of religion. Whatever God orders constitutes religion. Dharmam tu sakshat bhagavat pranitam. In Bhagavata Dharma, there is no question of what you believe and what I believe. Everyone must believe in the Supreme Lord and carry out his orders. Anukulyena Krishna Nushilanam. Whatever Krishna says, whatever God says, should be directly carried out. That is Dharma, religion. If one is actually Krishna conscious, he cannot have any enemies, since his only engagement is to induce others to surrender to Krishna or God. How can he have enemies? If one is actually Krishna conscious, he cannot have any enemies, since his only engagement is to induce others to surrender to Krishna or God. How can he have enemies? If one advocates the Hindu religion, the Muslim religion, or Christian religion, this religion or that religion, there will be conflicts. History shows that the followers of the religious systems without a clear conception of God have fought with one another. There are many instances of this in human history, but systems of religion that do not concentrate upon service to the Supreme Lord are temporary and cannot last for long because they are full of envy. There are many activities directed against such religious systems, and therefore one must give up the idea of my belief and your belief. Everyone should believe in God and surrender unto Him. That is Bhagavata Dharma. Bhagavata Dharma is not a concocted sectarian belief, for it entails research to find how everything is connected with Krishna. Ishavasyam idang sarvam. According to the Vedic injunctions, sarvam kalavidam brahma. Brahman, the Supreme, is present in everything. Bhagavata Dharma captures this presence of the Supreme. Bhagavata Dharma does not consider everything in the world to be false, because everything emanates from the Supreme. Nothing can be false. Because everything emanates from the Supreme, nothing can be false. Everything has some use in the service of the Supreme. For example, we are now dictating into a microphone and recording on a dictating machine, and thus we are finding how the machine can be connected to the Supreme Brahman. Since we are using this machine in the service of the Lord, it is Brahman. This is the meaning of Sarvam Kalavidam Brahma. Everything is Brahman because everything can be used for the service of the Supreme Lord. Nothing is mithya, false. Everything is factual. Bhagavata Dharma is called Sarvotkristna. No, it's called Sarvotkrista. Sarvotkrista. Krishta. It sounds like not chanting your rounds well. Sarvot Krishna. Bhagavad Dharma is called Sarvot Krista. What are you chanting? Sarvot Krista. Krishta. Sarvot Krishta. Krishna. The best of all religious systems. Sarvot Krishta. Because those who follow Bhagavad Dharma are not envious of anyone. Pure Bhagavatas, pure devotees invite everyone without envy to join the Krishna consciousness movement. A devotee is therefore exactly like the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Suridam Sarvabhutanam, he is the friend of all living entities. Therefore, this is the best of all religious systems. Whereas so-called religions are meant for a particular type of person who believes in a particular way, such discrimination has no place in Krishna consciousness or Bhagavata Dharma. If we scrutinize the religious systems meant for worship of demigods or anyone else but the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we will find that they are full of envy and therefore impure. 42. How can a religious system that produces envy of oneself and of others be beneficial for oneself and for them? What is auspicious about following such a system? What is actually to be gained? By causing pain to one's own self due to self-envy, and by causing pain to others, one arouses your anger and practices irreligion. Purport: any religious system but the process of Bhagavata Dharma, service as an eternal servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is a system of envy of one's own self and of others. For example, there are many systems of religion in which animal sacrifices are recommended. Such animal sacrifices are inauspicious both for the performer and for the animal. Although one is sometimes permitted to sacrifice an animal before the goddess Kali and eat it instead of purchasing meat from a slaughterhouse, permission to eat meat after a sacrifice in the presence of the goddess Kali is not the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is simply a concession for the miserable person who will not give up eating meat. It is meant to restrict his desire for unrestricted meat eating. Such a religious system is condemned. Therefore Krishna says, Sarvadharman parityaja ma'amekam sharanam braja. Give up all other duties and surrender unto me. That is the last word in religion. One may argue that the sacrifice of animals is recommended in the Vedas. This recommendation, however, is a restriction. Without Vedic restrictions on the purchase of meat, people will purchase meat from the market, which will be overflooded with meat shops, and slaughterhouses will increase. To restrict this, sometimes the Vedas say that one may eat meat after sacrificing an insignificant animal, like a goat, before the goddess Kali. In any case, a system of religion in which animal sacrifices are recommended is inauspicious for those who perform the sacrifices and for the animals. Envious persons who perform ostentatious animal sacrifices are condemned in Bhagavad Gita 16.7 as follows. Atma sambhavita stabda dhanamana badanvita yajite yama yagnaiste dambena vidipurvakam. Self-complacent and always impudent, deluded by wealth and false prestige, they sometimes perform sacrifices in name only without following any rules or regulations. Sometimes animal sacrifices are performed very gorgeously with grand arrangements for worshipping the goddess Kali. But such festivals, although performed in the name of yajna, are not actually yajna, for yajna means to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore it is recommended that in this age, specifically, Yagnai Sankirtana Prayer Yajantihu Sumedasaha. Those who have good intelligence satisfy the Yajna Purusha, Vishnu, by chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. Envious persons, however, are condemned by the Supreme Personality of Godhead as follows. Ahankaram balam darpam kamam krodham chasamshrita mamatma paradeheshu pradvishanto vyasuyakaha tamaham dvishata kruran samsareshu naradaman Shripama Jasrama Shubhan Asura Shveva Yonishu. Bewildered by false ego, strength, pride, lust, and anger, the demon becomes envious of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is situated in his own body and in the bodies of others, and blasphemes against the real religion. Those who are envious and mischievous, who are the lowest among men, are cast by me into the ocean of material existence, into various demoniac species of life. These persons are condemned by the Supreme Personality of Godhead as indicated by the words tavakopa. A person who commits murder is envious of himself and also the person he has killed. For the result of committing murder is that he will be arrested and hanged. If one transgresses the laws of a man-made government, he may escape being killed by the state, but one cannot escape the laws of God. A killer of any animal must be killed in the next life by the same animal. This is the law of nature. One must follow the instructions of the Supreme Lord. Sarvadharman parityaja mamekam shararam braja. If one follows any other system or religion, he is subject to punishment by the Supreme Personality of Godhead in many different ways. Therefore, if one follows a concocted system of religion, he is envious not only of others, but also of himself. Consequently, his system of religion is useless. Srimad Bhagavatam 128 says, Dharma shvanustita pumsam vishvaksena katasuya notpadi yadyatiratim shrama eva hi kevalam. Duties, dharma, executed by men, regardless of occupation, are only so much useless labor if they do not provoke attraction for the message of the Supreme Lord. Following a system of religion that does not awaken one's Krishna consciousness or God consciousness is merely a waste of time and labor. Shrama. Huh? Yes, sir.
And to be envious of oneself is to do things that are detrimental for yourself. Is that what it means?
Yeah. He said knowing what the result's going to be and you do it anyway, it's like self-destructive. So you must be envious of yourself. What do you think of that?
Why would you be envious of yourself?
Because you forget you're connected to Krishna?
I heard Srila Prabhupada say once that the reason we're so attached to this body is because we are in the body. And the reason we're so attached to our self is because Krishna is there with us and is our source.
But how does that have to do with envying yourself?
Banana, banana, banana. Want. Banana, banana, banana. Oh.
Okay, cut off. It's a long story. We'll get to that later. Okay, 43. My dear Lord, one's occupational duty is instructed in Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita according to your point of view, which never deviates from the highest goal of life. Those who follow their occupational duties under your supervision, being equal to all living entities, moving and non-moving, are not considering high and low. And weren't we the other day talking about the archaic use of the word envy? It doesn't always. Yeah, there's an older, as they say, archaic meaning to envy, and oftentimes when we were talking about this when we were driving, right? When Prabhupada uses certain words, sometimes you have to look back to find out the context of the word. Yeah, well, it makes some sense. I mean, we kind of make it fit, but we got to kind of like, push it in there. Let me see if this has the archaic in it. Huh? Okay, the obsolete term is malice. Malice. Malice means desire to cause pain or injury. Intent to commit an unlawful act or cause harm. So that fits better. You see? Well done. Excellent. Fantastic. Now where were we, Shamripras? Halfway through. My dear Lord, one's occupational duty is instructed in Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita according to your point of view, which never deviates from the highest goal of life. Those who follow their occupational duties under your supervision, being equal to all living entities, moving and non-moving, and not considering high and low, are called Aryans. Such Aryans worship you, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Bhagavat Dharma and Krishna Katha are identical. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted everyone to become a guru and preach the instructions of Krishna everywhere, from Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, the Puranas, Vedanta Sutra, and similar Vedic literatures. Aryans, who are advanced in civilization, follow Bhagavat Dharma. Prahlad Maharaj, although merely a child of 5 years, recommended Kaumara acharet pragno dharman bhagavatam iha dulabam manusham janma tadapya dhruvam artadam. Prahlad Maharaj preached Bhagavat Dharma among his classmates as soon as an opportunity was afforded by the absence of his teachers from the classroom. He said that from the very beginning of life, from the age of 5, children should be instructed about Bhagavat Dharma, because the human form of life, which is very rarely obtained, is meant for understanding this subject. Bhagavat Dharma means living according to the instructions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the Bhagavad Gita we find that the Supreme Lord has arranged human society in 4 social divisions, namely Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra. Again, the Puranas and other Vedic literatures set forth 4 ashramas, which are the divisions of spiritual life. Therefore, Bhagavat Dharma means the Varnashrama Dharma of the 4 social and 4 spiritual divisions. The members of the human society who strictly follow the principles of Bhagavat Dharma and live according to the instructions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are called Aryans, or Arya. A civilization of Aryans who strictly follow the instructions of the Lord and never deviate from those instructions is perfect. Such civilized men do not discriminate between trees, animals, human beings, and other living entities. Pandita Samadarshina. Because they are completely educated in Krishna consciousness, they see all living entities equally. Aryans do not kill even a small plant unnecessarily, not to speak of cutting trees for sense gratification. At the present moment, throughout the world, killing is prominent. Men are killing trees, they are killing animals, and they are killing other human beings also, all for sense gratification. This is not an Aryan civilization. As stated here, Sthirachara Sattva Kadam Beshvapat Pritagdiya. The word apritagdiya indicates that Aryans do not distinguish between lower and higher grades of life. All life should be protected. All human beings have a right to live, all living beings have a right to live, even the trees and plants. This is the basic principle of an Aryan civilization. Apart from the lower living entities, those who have come to the platform of human civilization should be divided into a society of Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras. The Brahmanas should follow the instructions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead as stated in Bhagavad Gita and other Vedic literatures. The criterion must be guna and karma. In other words, one should acquire the qualities of a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, or Shudra and act accordingly. This is the civilization accepted by the Aryans. Why do they accept it? They accept it because they are very much eager to satisfy Krishna. This is perfect civilization. Aryans do not deviate from the instructions of Krishna, nor do they have doubts about Krishna. But non-Aryans and other demoniac people fail to follow the instructions of Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. This is because they have been trained in sense gratification at the cost of all other living entities. Nunam pramata kurate vikarma. Their only business is to indulge in all kinds of forbidden activities for sense gratification. Yadindriya pritaya apranoti. They deviate in this way because they want to gratify their senses. They have no other occupation or ambition. Their method of civilization is condemned in the previous verse. Ka shemo nija parayo kiyan varta swa paradruha dharmena. What is the meaning of a civilization that kills oneself and others? This verse therefore advises that everyone become a member of the Aryan civilization and accept the instructions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One should conduct his social, political, and religious affairs according to his instructions. We are spreading the Krishna consciousness movement to try to establish a society the way Krishna wants it. This is the meaning of Krishna consciousness. We are therefore presenting Bhagavad Gita as it is and kicking out all kinds of mental concoction. Fools and rascals interpret Bhagavad Gita in their own way. When Krishna says, Manmana Bhavamad Bhakto Madhyaji Mam Namaskuru, always think of me, become my devotee, worship me, and offer your homage to me, unto me, they comment that this is not Krishna to whom we must surrender. Thus they derive imaginary meanings from Bhagavad Gita. The Krishna consciousness movement, however, strictly follows Bhagavad Dharma, the instructions of Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, for the complete welfare of human society. One who misinterprets Bhagavad Gita, twisting out some meaning for his sense gratification, is a non-Aryan. Therefore, commentaries on Bhagavad Gita by such persons should be immediately rejected. One should try to follow Bhagavad Gita as it is. In Bhagavad Gita 12.6-7, Lord Sri Krishna says, Yetu sarvani karmani mai sanyasya matpara ananyedaiva yogena mam jayanta upasate teshamaham samudharta mrityu sangsara sagarat bhavina chirat parta maya vishichachetasam. For one who worships me, giving up all his activities unto me, and being devoted to me without deviation, engaged in devotional service and always meditating upon me, who has fixed his mind upon me, O son of Pritha, for him I am the swift deliverer from the ocean of birth and death. You may.
This sentence. We are spreading the Krishna consciousness movement to try to establish a society the way that Krishna wants it. This is the meaning of Krishna consciousness. We are therefore presenting Bhagavad Gita as it is and kicking out all kinds of mental concoction. My suggestion is that every time we have a meeting in an organizational management sense, we should say this first.
Duly noted and ordered. It shall be so. (45) My Lord, it is impossible for one to be immediately freed from all material contamination. My Lord, it is not impossible. You all didn't catch that? Or you're waiting for me to go back? You're playing possum. My Lord, it is not impossible for one to be immediately freed from all material contamination by seeing you. Not to speak of seeing you personally, merely by hearing the holy name of your Lordship only once. Even Chandalas, men of the lowest class, are freed from all material contamination. Under the circumstances, who will not be freed from material contamination simply by seeing you? Purport. As stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam 9.5.16, Yanama Shuti Matrena Puman Pavati Nirmala, simply by hearing the holy name of the Lord one is immediately purified. Therefore, in this age of Kali, when people are very contaminated, when all people are very contaminated, the chanting of the holy name of the Lord is recommended as the only means of improvement. Harinama, Harinama, Harinameva Kevalam, Kalau Nasteva, 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 Gatiranyata. In this age of quarrel and hypocrisy, the only means of deliverance is the chanting of the holy name of the Lord. There's no other way, there's no other way, there's no other way. Brihan Naradiya Purana. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu introduced this chanting of the holy name 500 years ago. And now through the Krishna consciousness movement, the Hare Krishna movement, we are actually seeing that men who are considered to belong to the lowest class are being delivered from all sinful activities simply by hearing the holy name of the Lord. Samsara, material existence, is a result of sinful actions. Everyone in this material world is condemned. Yet, as there are different grades of prisoners, there are different grades of men. All of them in all statuses of life are suffering. To stop the suffering of material existence, one must take to the Hare Krishna movement of Sankirtan, or Krishna conscious life. Herein it is said, Yanama Sakrit Shravanat. The holy name of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is so powerful that if once heard without offenses, it can purify the lowest of men. Kirata Hunandra Pulinda Pulakasha. Such men who are called Chandalas are less than Shudras, but they also can be purified simply by hearing the holy name of the Lord, not to speak of personally seeing the Lord. From our present position, the Supreme Personality of Godhead can be personally seen as the deity in the temple. The deity of the Lord is not different from the Supreme Lord. Because we cannot see the Supreme Lord with our present blunt eyes, the Lord has kindly consented to come before us in a form we can see. Therefore, the deity in the temple should not be considered material. By offering food to the deity and by decorating and serving the deity, one gets the same result that one derives from serving the Lord personally in Vaikuntha. There you have it. Text number 45. Therefore, my dear Lord, simply seeing you has now wiped out all the contamination of sinful activities and the results of material attachment and lusty desires, which always filled my mind and the core of my heart. Whatever is predicted by the great sage Narada Muni cannot be otherwise. In other words, I have obtained your audience as a result of being trained by Narada Muni. Purport: this is the process of the perfect way. One must take lessons from authorities like Narada, Vyas, Asita, and follow their principles. Then one will be able to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead even with one's own eyes. One only needs training. Atashi Krishna Namadi Nabhaved Krayam Indriye. With our blunt senses and other senses, we cannot perceive the Supreme. With our blunt eyes and other senses, we cannot perceive the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But if we engage our senses in the service of the Lord according to the instructions of the authorities, it will be possible to see Him. As soon as one sees the Supreme Personality of Godhead, all the sinful reactions in the core of one's heart are certainly vanquished. And that ends tonight's reading and discussion of the Srimad Bhagavatam. We thank everyone for participating from various locations around the world and for joining us here at Govardhan Hill. Gaur Premanande Nitya Gaura Hari Bo Nitya Gaura Hari Bo Nitya Hari Bo Nitya Gaura Hari Bo Vanchakalpadurvishya Kripasnabhevacha Patitanam Pavanibhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Nantakoti Vaishnaviniki Jai. Thanks for stopping by, everyone. Shlokas. Nachariyar Marman, Nachariyar Marman, Nachariyar Marman, Nachariyar Marman, hey, Nachariyar Marman, Nachariyar Marman, Nachariyar Marman, Nachariyar Marman.